So I'm Maya Van Rossum. I'm the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. That's right there, me on the screen. But I am starting off by welcoming you all to the webinar. This is a webinar that is being created and a movement that's being created and advanced by a coalition of organizations working together. That includes the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, but also PennFuture, the Clean Air Council, Environment New Jersey, and River Network. And we are hoping that as you learn from this webinar and as we advance this cause, we're going to have more and more organizations joining this growing coalition for our beautiful Delaware River. Let's go. So really quickly, what we're going to cover today, you're going to have a couple of speakers and we're going to hand off one at a time. But we're going to start off a discussion talking about our beautiful Delaware River, where we've been ecologically and in terms of our human communities, and where we're going and where we hope to go. You're going to get some information about the Clean Water Act and the Delaware River Basin Commission, all of which are critical parts of this effort that we're advancing. You are going to hear about how our beautiful Delaware River is being used right now to enhance people's lives for increased recreation. And then you're going to hear what we need to do about that, what actions we need to take to ensure that those growing uses are genuinely protected by our state, regional, and federal agencies. And so, of course, all of you who know about our beautiful Delaware River and our beautiful Delaware estuary, you've all heard stories about the beauty and the abundance of our river, right? We've all heard about how in the past, in colonial times or before, how you could walk across the river on the backs of the fish. Sometimes the fish story talks about the shad, sometimes it talks about the sturgeon. Could be any number of species that you may have heard about. But the point is that our Delaware River was so filled with beautiful health and beautiful life because of the wonderful water quality, because of the beautiful landscapes within our watershed. Because of all this abundance and health, right, people flocked to the Delaware River. All up and down the main stem river, people came to benefit from the healthy river water and the abundance and life that was in there. And no place did people come more quickly, more fervently, more passionately than in our beautiful Philadelphia Camden reach of the river. But unfortunately, as people flocked to the river to get the many benefits of a healthy river, they started to use it in ways that contributed to the decline of the quality of the river, the abundance of the river, the beauty of the banks. And so as a result, by the time you got to the mid-1900s, we would all hear stories about how you could smell the Delaware River from a plane because it was so polluted. Granted, planes didn't fly as high back then as they do now, but still, smelling a river from a plane is a big deal. We would hear the reports, you can read in the history about the reports of dock workers who would come to work along the docks and they would get sick or perhaps even die because of the contaminants, because of the pollution that was in the river. And of course, the very sad, iconic story about the 20-mile oxygen dead zone, top to bottom, bank to bank in the Philadelphia Camden reach of the river, that was the result of contamination in the river and prevented the migration of critical fish species, including the very ecologically and economically important Delaware River shad populations. And so we really had a time where too many people misusing and abusing the river in so many ways resulted in people actually losing the Delaware River, losing their ability to work along or enjoy the river waters safely and healthfully. And this very notably happened in various stretches of the river, but particularly the urban reaches like the Philadelphia Camden reach of the river. But thankfully, people got wise and they realized this was a problem, right? So they turned back to the river. People got active. They advocated for the passage of local, state, and federal laws that would protect the river and help enhance the water quality. Agencies like the Delaware River Basin Commission were created to focus strictly on right? Restoring quality and health to the river. And as a result, we did restore quality to the river. We did restore health to the river. People were able to and wanting to turn back to the river for work, for food, for recreation, and for daily life. And at this point, we have a river where up and down the length of the river, right, according to the laws, many, many uses of the river are protected, from aquatic life to recreational uses. But when we talk about what we call primary contact recreation, which you're going to hear more about later, but that's really enjoying the river in a way where you actually get wet, right? And you come into contact with it. What we can see from the regulations on the books is that we have primary contact recreation protections upriver and downriver from the Philadelphia-Camden Reach, but we don't actually have those protections in the Philadelphia-Camden Reach of the river. And yet, when you go out, right, to that section of river and you just take a look on a beautiful warm day, you can see the many, many ways people are enjoying the Delaware estuary, particularly in the Philadelphia-Camden Reach of the river, in ways that bring them into primary contact with the river water. And so the organizations that are hosting this webinar, Clean Air Council, PennFuture, Environment New Jersey, Penn Environment, River Network, and the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, have crafted and put forth a petition to the Delaware River Basin Commission and invited others to join us in advancing this petition. And we already have other joiners like Bartram's Garden and the Darby Creek Valley Association, the Glen Ford on the Delaware, and Clean Water Action, advancing a call for increased regulatory protections to ensure that when people come into contact with the river water during their recreational activities and other activities, that they can do so healthfully and safely. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Abby Jones with PennFuture. She's the Vice President of legal and policy work at PennFuture, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the laws upon which we are basing this action, this effort, this activity that we're hoping to inspire you to join us in.
Thanks, Maya. So I'm going to give hopefully a brief overview of the legal basis of why we petitioned the DRBC for this upgrade. So I'm going to start with the Clean Water Act. In 1972, in response to the growing public awareness and concern about water pollution, much like Maya just mentioned, the Clean Water Act was created, bringing about sweeping changes to how we protect our surface waters across the country. The Clean Water Act's objective is to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. The Clean Water Act attempts to meet this lofty objective by regulating pollutant discharges into waters of the United States. And in the end, the goal of the Clean Water Act is that all waters of the United States will be fishable and swimmable. But how is the Clean Water Act implemented? Through what's known as water quality standards. Now, water quality standards are made up of three basic elements of protection: protective water uses, water quality criteria, and anti-degradation protections. First, all surface waters must be given a designated protective use known as a designated use. These water uses include things like aquatic life, as Maya had mentioned, recreation, drinking water supplies, and such. And these uses can be established either across an entire water body or a segment or by segment sections. Second, the criteria are established so that the designated protected water uses are actually being protected. And these criteria can be either numeric, like a pH or a concentration of fecal coliform bacteria, which is important for our petition, or narrative, like the waters must be free from oil, scum, turbidity, odors, color, things like that. And these criteria are the basis for permit effluent discharges, for example. And the different designated uses require different levels of water quality criteria and protection. So for example, the criteria needed to protect a use of recreation or fishing is more stringent than the level needed to protect an industrial water supply use. Third, the Clean Water Act provides for what's known as anti-degradation protections, which at its very basic provide a framework for maintaining and protecting water quality levels that have already been achieved. And these are what's known as the existing uses of a water body. Now, remember, the Clean Water Act's overarching goal is not only to restore polluted waters, but to maintain water quality and prevent further degradation to our nation's waters. So this is why we have these anti-degradation protections. And so that this means that every surface water in Pennsylvania and New Jersey across the country has both a designated protected use and an existing protected use. So as I mentioned before, they have both, but what does this mean? So a designated use is a use that is set forth in a state, or in this case, the DRBC's water quality regulations. It is oftentimes seen as a water quality goal in line with the Clean Water Act's emphasis on restoring water quality. And because designated uses are actually codified regulations, they can be changed, either upgraded or in some very rare cases downgraded, based on relevant information and determinations made by the regulating agencies. Now, two requirements when establishing a designated use: it must be aimed at the Clean Water Act's fishable, swimmable goals, and it must protect downstream uses. Existing uses, on the other hand, reflect the use of a particular water body or segment of a water body, which has actually been attained at some time after the magic date of November 28, 1975. And this is whether or not that use is included in the water quality standards. So whether or not the designated use includes that particular existing use, it's what it is. It's what the water body is actually allowing. So that this means sometimes the existing use and the designated use may not match. And remember, because different uses require different levels of water quality criteria to be protective, an existing use, for example, may require much more stringent levels of protection than another use in the designated use. Which brings us to the Delaware River Basin Commission. Water quality standards, including designated uses, are established by federal government, EPA, the state, or tribes, and in some cases, like for the Delaware River, intergovernmental commissions such as the Delaware River Basin Commission, or DRBC. Now, the DRBC is made up of 4 basin states, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and the federal government. And their goal is to conserve and manage the resources of the Delaware River. Unlike some other interstate water commissions, the DRBC has the authority to regulate both water quantity and water quality. So this means that the DRBC sets the water quality standards for the Delaware River, which are incorporated by reference into Pennsylvania and New Jersey's state water quality standards. Now, unfortunately, the DRBC's water quality standards, the uses and such, have largely remained the same since the late 1960s, with a slight upgrade in some recreational uses in the 90s, despite the health of the Delaware River up and downstream that Maya had discussed earlier. Now, because we're here today to talk about our petition to the DRBC to upgrade a portion of the lower main stem of the Delaware River, we must be aware of all the different uses at issue here. And we're talking about recreational uses. The DRBC's regulations include 2 types of recreational uses: primary and secondary contact. And I know that Jack's going to be talking about this a bit more detail later in the presentation, but I want to set the stage here as to the main differences between these 2 recreational uses, which is that primary contact recreational use presumes that the probability of water ingestion, actually drinking, getting the water in your mouth, is high, whereas secondary contact recreation presumes a minimal probability of water ingestion. So you can think of it this way: if for any water sport, such as swimming, paddleboarding, things like that, in which the primary intent is for you to be in the water, your body, your face, things like that, then that's going to be a primary contact recreation. So again, why are we here? Well, as Maya said, the DRBC has designated all of the zones of the main stem of the Delaware River as primary contact recreation, except for Zone 3 and a portion of Zone 4 in the Philadelphia and Camden reach of the Delaware, as you can see here on this map. But as Jack will discuss more, we know that these sections are actually being used for primary contact recreation. And this means that the primary contact recreation is the existing use for the entire main stem Delaware. And we know that under the Clean Water Act, these existing uses must be protected. So how do you change a designated use? Because designated uses are regulations, they can be changed through a process known as redesignation. For those cases where the existing use is more protective than a designated use, the redesignation is often referred to as an upgrade, like our petition here. And so that's exactly what we did, the Lower Delaware. And what we hope you will support is that we petition the Delaware River Basin Commission to upgrade the designated use of Zone 3 and the portion of Zone 4 to match the current existing use of primary contact recreation. And I'll turn it over to Jack now to take a deeper dive into the proof that people are actually engaging in primary contact recreation in and on the water. Jack Byerly is an advocacy coordinator with Clean Air Council.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Abby. So I'll be going over some of the primary contact recreation activities already occurring on the Delaware River along Philadelphia and Camden. Now, before we dive into the recreation activities already taking place on this section of the river, I think it's important to reiterate why the Delaware River Basin Commission and its member states need to formally recognize primary contact recreation as a designated use for the portion of the Delaware from Philadelphia and Camden down to Chester Township. So, as Abby mentioned earlier, the designated use classifications for recreation are split into two categories: primary contact recreation and secondary contact recreation. So secondary contact recreation includes activities where the probability of significant water contact or water ingestion, actually swallowing water, is minimal. So this category of secondary contact recreation includes activities like fishing or riding in a motorboat or shoreline recreation. Primary contact recreation includes activities that could result in significant direct contact with the water or ingestion of the water or immersion in the water. So primary contact recreation includes activities we commonly see on the Delaware River, like kayaking and canoeing and jet skiing. And we know that people regularly enjoy these activities on the river, and there's a wealth of programs that allow thousands of people each year of all ages and experience levels to get out on the Delaware River to participate in primary contact recreation activities. And during these activities, people get splashed regularly. Given a high number of beginner-level kayakers and canoers on the river, people do occasionally accidentally fall into the river. So currently, this portion of the Delaware River along Philadelphia and Camden has a designated use classification of secondary contact recreation. So that means that the water quality only needs to be good enough to protect the health of those who engage in activities involving limited or incidental contact with the water, like fishing or recreation on the shoreline. However, we know that there's a wide array of primary contact recreation activities already taking place on this section of the river. So according to the Clean Water Act, states and the DRBC must revise a designated use classification if that classification does not include any use that is already taking place on the waterway. So DRBC currently does not recognize primary contact recreation as an existing use for Zone 3 and Upper Zone 4, which is the area along Philadelphia and Camden. So DRBC's formal recognition of primary contact recreation as an existing use for this section of the river would be a crucial step in the regulatory process to upgrade the designated use and ensure that water quality standards protect the health and safety of everyone who enjoys primary contact recreation activities on the river. So now we're going to get into some profiles of the organizations that organize primary contact recreation activities on the Delaware River. The first being the Independent Seaport Museum, which is, the programs have become increasingly popular over the past decade. You may be familiar with their Paddle Pens Landing program in the Pens Landing Marina, which is on the Delaware River, right between the Independent Seaport Museum and the Spruce Street Harbor Park. So with Paddle Pens Landing, for $8, anyone can rent a kayak, rowboat, or swan boat and paddle around in the marina area. And the number of annual participants at Paddle Pens Landing has steadily increased over the past few years, from 15,000 paddlers in 2015 to about 19,700 paddlers in 2019. Each summer, Independent Seaport Museum hosts youth summer camps for kids ages 6 to 12. The campers regularly go paddling in the Penns Landing Marina, and in 2019, 811 campers participated in paddling activities in the marina. With the kayaking excursion program, kayakers of all experience levels are led on tours by experienced guides. You'll see in the picture to the right here, this is a kayaking excursion from the Penns Landing Marina to Graffiti Pier. It's about a 6-mile trip. For those unfamiliar, Graffiti Pier is located just northeast of Fishtown near Lehigh Avenue. And in 2019, 150 people participated in these kayaking excursion tours. Finally, the Walnut to Walnut Challenge is an annual event where canoers and kayakers go on a 15-mile paddle from the Schuylkill banks on the Schuylkill River along Walnut Street, down and around Philadelphia to the Independent Seaport Museum's marina on the Delaware River. And in 2019, nearly 100 paddlers participated in this event. So safety is the utmost focus of the Independent Seaport Museum's programs, whether participants are paddling in the marina or are out on paddling excursions along the river. But accidents do happen, kayaks can tip, and people do occasionally fall into the water. And participants regularly come into contact with the water by getting splashed. This is especially true in excursions when people are farther away from the shore where the tide causes the river to be choppy. So since 2014, the organization Aquavita has hosted primary contact recreation programs at Penns Landing Marina. Aquavita hosts stand-up paddleboard tours, where a guide teaches participants how to use a stand-up paddleboard and then leads them on a tour to different areas in the Penns Landing Marina. Aquavita also holds paddleboard yoga and acro classes. So acro, you'll see pictured here, some people, 2 people on a board at a time. Acro combines elements like yoga and acrobatics, elements of yoga and acrobatics, and people occasionally make jumps or perform gymnastic-like movements on their paddleboards. So during these activities, people occasionally submerge their hands or feet into the water and get splashed. While the boards are fairly stable and participants receive hands-on training, people of all experience levels are participating and accidents do occur, and participants have fallen into the water on occasion. But each summer, 300 to 400 people participate in Aquavita's primary contact recreation activities. So now we're going to take you across the river to Camden. The Center for Aquatic Sciences at Adventure Aquarium in Camden hosts kayak outings on the Delaware River and the Cooper River. Each outing launches on the Delaware River from Pine Point Park, where the center has a storage container housing 10 2-person kayaks. And the center holds community paddling events during the spring through the fall, as well as outings for school groups and organizations. In 2019, over 400 people participated in kayak outings organized by the Center for Aquatic Sciences, including over 100 students from Camden schools. So in partnership with the Camden Shipyard and Maritime Museum, the Urban Boatworks program teaches middle and high school students in Camden how to build wooden paddle boats, canoes, and kayaks. Since 2009, 47 boats have been handcrafted and launched by students on the Delaware and Cooper rivers. During the after-school program's outings, students regularly paddle canoes and kayaks through the tidal portion of the Cooper River and out onto the Delaware River between Petty's Island and Camden. With the River Guides program, high school students can lead kayakers and canoers on educational tours along the Cooper and Delaware rivers, teaching people about local history and the ecology of the area. The River Guides regularly host community paddles, kayaking trips for organizations, and have facilitated orientation programs for the Camden Academy Charter High School. Each year, Urban Promise, which is the parent organization of Urban Boatworks and Urban Trekkers, hosts the Paddle for Promise fundraiser, where Urban Promise organizes longer paddle trips that traverse this section of the Delaware River. For the 2018 Paddle for Promise event, 75 people kayaked and canoed from Trenton, New Jersey, all the way down to Wilmington, Delaware, on a 2-day trip. In 2019, nearly 400 people paddled out on the Delaware River while participating in Urban Promise's programs. So now I'm going to hand it off to Doug O'Malley. Doug is the Director of Environment New Jersey. He will be going over what individuals and organizations can do to urge the Delaware River Basin Commission and its member states to upgrade the designated use for this portion of the river to protect the health and safety of everyone who enjoys primary contact recreation activities.
Super. Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to Abby and Maya for helping to kick us off. I'm kind of most excited to talk about the action steps here in the petition to the Delaware River Basin Commission, because really what we're talking about here is getting action by decision makers to make the Delaware to be a place where primary contact not only can happen in a safe way, because right now it is happening. I think I'm going to struggle, like others, to kind of move the slides along. Let me hopefully it's not that hard, but yeah, here we go. All right. And then I just want to kind of note here too that, you know, we've had multiple organizations that have been behind this petition. I want to especially thank the work of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, the Clean Air Council, and PennFuture, which really helped to draft this petition. And the petition is not just a kind of a simple call for action. It's a document that lists the activities that are happening right now all along the river. And it's directed towards the governors of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and New York, because the petition, as you've just heard from Jack, is documenting the people right now are coming into contact with the Delaware. The existing use is clearly being demonstrated. And we have a situation where the DRBC really is obligated to upgrade the designated use from river miles 81 to 108, essentially the lower stretches of the Delaware zones 3 and 4, to reflect this new existing use. I want to move on to a little bit on kind of why we need your help. And apologies if I'm having a little trouble moving the slides forward here. But in terms of kind of what the reason why we're asking for your help is because this is not just a question of asking the DRBC to act. It's also a question of getting testimonials from as many people as possible, from residents, on both sides of the river, and to document the use that is already occurring. And so you might not necessarily directly recreate in the river, but you probably know that someone that does. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to document the actual uses of the river right now. If we could keep on going to the next slide, that'd be great. And so, in terms of what we're looking for testimonies and testimonials to be able to show all of the governors and the DRBC that this is not kind of an aspirational desire by these organizations, but really the public has been really reunited with the river and is using the river in ways that they have not in the past. And I think for a lot of elected officials, we always struggle because it's not as if they spend their weekends spending time outside. We would love to get more elected officials and governors on the river because I think, honestly, they probably don't spend that much time, on the Delaware. They might pass over the river, they might see it, they don't think about the use that is happening on the river right now. And there's a culture that we kind of need to collectively change. And that's why I think this petition, is not just, is so important from a, from a factual basis, but also important from a cultural basis, because there are a lot of people, including people that we know, that think of the Delaware still as kind of an off-limits place. But we know from people that are using the Delaware that that is not the case. The people are already paddling, they're boating, they're using the tidal Delaware River in a way that needs to be protected as an existing use, and we need to document that. And so this is where we need your help, and we want to get you to document your use of the river or your friends or families. And so really, I want to kind of transition to talking about how to kind of get the word out for what to include in your submission. First, you definitely want to address all the governors and the Delaware River Basin Commission. All of them need to be put on notice per se. But we also want you to be able to document what you or your family or people that you know, and this is best if it's coming from you directly, but how much you've been involved on the river, right? Have you paddleboarded there before? How much? When were you out there? What community were you involved in? It might just literally be your hometown. It might be a place that you've never had access to. This is one of the other issues that we struggle with, is there's not enough public access points along the river. And so we want to hear, what you've done to get on the river, and if you've come in contact with the water. Is it something that you were worried about when you kind of got dunked in the river, or you got river water on you? Did you accidentally swallow water? Did you splash or fall in? Those are things that are critical for us to be able to prove the point that there's existing uses. And I think the other kind of key thing here is that we want as much kind of multimedia use as possible. So if you have selfies, that's gold. Share us your selfies. If you have video, that's even better. We are really trying to paint a story for decision makers that aren't spending their time on the river, and certainly those governors and governor staff that aren't spending time on the river, and to show them the public is ahead of where they are. And this is why it's so important for the Delaware River Basin Commission, because we think we're making a pretty strong case, but we need to go a step farther. I just want to include some quick tips on kind of video testimonials. So the idea here is maybe you don't have that testimonial from when you were on the river, right? I know when I'm kayaking, I'm petrified I'm going to drop my cell phone. So I generally try not to do that. That's fine. You can do it right now from the comfort of your home. This is the best quarantine activity possible because it's really short and it can be powerful. So the ideal video is about 2 minutes. You want to record in landscape mode, which is a fancy way for saying it should be horizontal, not vertical. Think horizontal. You want to make sure you're in a quiet place. So, my kids, if I don't watch out, they're going to barge in here in a moment. You want to give 2 minutes of quiet. And it's best not to try to do it as a kind of a selfie video, just because your hand's going to be a little shaky. So find someone to hold you, a partner, a friend, maybe a kid, whoever. Have someone hold the camera. And then also just practice a little bit, just so it feels a little more natural. And again, shoot for that 2 minute time. I wanted to kind of move on to how organizations can help. Well, the first and most important is to join the petition itself. We have a broad diversity of organizations on, but we need a lot more. We know there are a ton of organizations all along the Delaware that benefit from having a river that is alive and that we can participate in. We need more organizations to join. So if you're a member, a board member, a donor, call your favorite organization and say, get on board. You also want to encourage staff members of your organization to share their stories and experiences. I think this is kind of really fun because many, obviously staff environmental organizations, we love being outside. We can't be outside right now. So this is kind of a little bit of therapy, right? Outside therapy of kind of how things used to be. Get members of your staff to do this and do outreach to your members and to individuals. Post this on social media, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. You'll find that people will definitely want to join. And then even better if you can send an action alert to your individual members of your organization. And ideally to submit a written or video recorded testimonial on behalf of your organization, just because we want to be able to provide signatures on a petition and individual submissions, but it's even more powerful if we're getting board members and leaders of organizations to weigh in. And as I said before, you don't necessarily need to be a waterfowl, but presumably you know someone that is, and the more you can reference those stories, the better. And then I just wanted to wrap up just by talking about some of the instructions and links. This will be circulated. So for individual submissions, we have a bit.ly link for sharing your river story. For organizational sign-ons, we have the Delaware petition. And then we have web links that are kind of perfect for social media, as well as for sending out to your broader list. So with that, I kind of want to wrap up my section and turn it back to Maya.
So I think that we'll go ahead and close it unless we have any parting words from our panelists. All right, everybody's happy that you all joined. Please, 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 if you are part of an organization, sign on in support of the petition so you can be listed in the header. If you're an individual who supports the petition, there's also a place where you can demonstrate your support. And please tell us your stories by going to the bit.ly link. It's powerful, it's important, and we want to hear from you. Thanks everybody so much for joining us.